You, Chair now recognizes Mr. Palmer from Alabama.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regard to the concerns that have been raised by my Democratic colleagues about how eliminating buildings and positions might impact the local economy, I'd just like to point out that remote work has severely impacted the local economy. It's widely reported about how downtown businesses are struggling in D.C. because people are not coming downtown to work. Ms. Gressler, one of the things that concerns me is that the federal government makes locality pay payments, and it depends on the cost of living in the cities. Washington, D.C. is one of the most expensive cities, one of the highest locality pays. Have you looked into whether or not people who are working remotely now are getting the same locality pay that they were coming downtown?
They're supposed to be, but the report from Senator Ernst that I believe has been entered into the record has a lot of information about that. And when there were some spot checks done, there are often cases where 80% of employees who should not be receiving that locality-based pay adjustment are in fact receiving it.
That could be hundreds of millions of dollars and billions of dollars that they shouldn't be getting because they're not working in the office. So Mr. O'Malley, I know you're not there anymore, but I think that's something that we might want to address in this Congress is to make sure that the pay matches the location, and rather than paying these higher locality payments.
Yes, sir.
It was also stated by one of my Democratic colleagues, he raised questions about whether or not we're actually going to be able to cut $1.5 trillion or something. I forgot the exact number that he said. And it just shows a lack of understanding of the problem, for one thing. But if you just look at improper payments, Ms. Gessler, we're right at $240 billion a year, and we're doing everything in 10-year windows. When we're talking about cutting $2.5 trillion or whatever the number might be, that's over 10 years. So if we just reduced improper payments by half, that's $1.2 trillion plus interest. It probably gets us to that $1.5 trillion, but it certainly gets us over halfway to the goal of the baseline of $2.5 trillion. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yes, you point out improper payments. That's something that most Americans don't realize. I think it's to the tune of about $1,700 per household per year. It's just improper payments, money that's going to the wrong people and in the wrong amounts. And it is a complex problem, and it has to deal with people getting benefits that they weren't entitled to.
And we're borrowing every dime of that to send it out improperly.
Yes,
which
IT
is
problems,
insane.
There's widespread problems, but there are a lot of savings.
Well, under your watch, Mr. O'Malley, in 2023, it was $8 billion in improper payments from Social Security, and a lot of that had to do with the backlog due to delays, and people, and they're either underpaid or overpaid. Most of it was overpayments of, like I said, $8 billion, and there's $23 billion in Social Security in unrecovered overpayments. Did you make any effort to deal with that?
Yes, sir. I wasn't there in 2023, but that number sounds right. It is a large program.
Well, while you were there, did you make any effort to
Yes, sir. Every 2 weeks, we met with all of the deputy commissioners. For 1 hour, we focused on the things we could do to bring down the overpayments and also to bring down the underpayments.
How about payments to dead people? Because when I first came to Congress in 2015, this was, I believe, I may have been the first member of Congress to actually get this into the budget. To deal with improper payments, and,
right.
And I think we were sending out around $3 to $5 billion a year to people who are dead, and in one case, they were sending checks to someone who would have been 130 plus years old.
I believe that I believe they've gotten better at that. However, there are instances where, because of kind of the automated alerts, that sometimes we see there's occasions when payments are ceased when we wrongly. When the agency wrongly thinks that someone has died. So that happens also. It's a large agency.
It's a huge issue.
Serves a lot of people.
I think, again, going back to the issue of remote work, I think there's some times when that's appropriate, but I don't think it's totally appropriate at the degree that you're doing it. Let me ask you this quickly. The Constitution says one Congress can't bind another Congress. Do you think it's proper that an agency or an administrator can bind a Congress or a president the way you have?
Well, sir, the term of that contract was actually, I do believe, expiring in 2029.
I'm not asking about the contract. I'm asking about whether or not that's appropriate. Let me ask you this.
It's appropriate
How much interaction did you have with President Biden during your tenure? How much interaction did you have with President Biden?
Well, I talk to the White House all the time. Saw the
I'm talking about him,
president
though,
a
the
few
president.
times.
Okay. Did you find his mental acuity sufficient for the job?
I found him to be pretty
So you
sharp whenever I
participated in the
spoke to him.
cover-up and the lie?
Excuse me?
You participated in the cover-up and lie that the president had the mental acuity to carry out the functions of the office, which clearly he didn't.
Our
Mr. Chairman, I
headquarters
yield
was
back.
in, our headquarters was in Baltimore. I was often in the field. I spoke to the White House all the time and had the support I needed to turn around an agency whose staffing has been reduced to a 50-year low.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair now recognizes Mr.
In 2002, Congress passed the Improper Payments Information Act. In 2010, Congress passed the Improper Payments Elimination and Recovery Act. In 2012, Congress passed two more bills, the Improper Payments Elimination Recovery Improvement Act and the Improper Payments Transparency Act. Yet GAO said that the federal government's losing between $233 to $521 billion per year. If you just split the difference, that's $377 billion over a 10-year window. That's $3.7 trillion, not counting the interest that we're having to pay. And in regard to the inspector generals, it sounds like we're not going to miss the inspector general. I don't mean to be dismissive of that. I have high regard for the inspector generals, but in terms of actually lowering our improper payment rate, it keeps going up year after year. How do you explain that? Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong person. I need to sit up straight so I can see the names.
No worries.
Okay, go ahead.
I think we really need to get back to basics and having internal control in payment processes. As you noted, there's been numerous amounts of legislation adding on requirements, reporting improper payments, but we really need to get back to the fundamentals of having internal controls in payment processes, understanding what the root causes are for the improper payments going out, and focusing on that, requiring agencies to report their plans for prevention to you, and having accountability for having those prevention plans in place.
Isn't the problem, though, the failure to have enforcement in any of these bills? I've been working on it since I've been in Congress. I believe I might have been the first one to get the Budget Committee to really take into account improper payments. Been working with Mr. Dodero this whole time on it, and it's not getting better. As a matter of fact, there's in fiscal year 24, there are 16 agencies that reported a total of about $162 billion in improper payments. And when you dig down into it, about 55% of the improper payment problem is administrative error, failure to verify eligibility, and antiquated data systems. Which brings me to Mr. Musk, and I know there's a lot of consternation about what they're doing, but literally, he's brought in some computer experts with 21st century technology and done better oversight of the federal government in the last 6 weeks than we've done in the last 40 years. I mean, isn't that one of the biggest problems we have with improper payments is we've got antiquated data systems. We don't have the 21st century technology we need to do oversight, proper oversight.
Having reliable data is very important. Having accurate, reliable, complete data in the systems to be able to do those integrity checks is critical, yes.
Well, after we did pass the Improper Payments Elimination Recovery Improvement Act, I know of one outside company that was brought in that did some analysis of labor, Department of Labor contracts and found millions of dollars in fraud, overpayments, other monies that should have come back to the federal government through credits that were not recovered. And when this was disclosed, the Department of Labor at that time basically waved off as disinterested. Isn't that a problem?
The pay and chase model is a problem. Trying to recover the payments after the fact is much less effective.
So what we need to do is focus on stopping it on the front end. And that's where we need the improvements in technology, where we need the investment in technology. And This is a huge issue when you're reporting 16 agencies are accounting for 162 billion. 10-year window, that's $1.6 trillion. And we're running a deficit of over $2 trillion every year. If you just look at the totality of it, 377 billion, that's 3.77 trillion, not counting the interest we're paying on that money, because every dollar we send out improperly is a borrowed dollar. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. I now recognize the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Palmer, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank the witnesses for being here. Mr. Mills, good to see you this morning. What are your estimates for power generation demands over the next decade? Any idea of what those demands will be?
The total generation demand increases from growth?
Right.
Is that well, there are probably...
Well, let me restate it.
Yes, sir.
We're in an arms race with China for artificial intelligence and quantum computing. Yeah. What amount of power generation, in addition to what we have now, will we need?
Well, the FERC is reporting an increase between 60 and 130 gigawatts more demand by 2030 than they thought was going to happen.
That's in 5 years.
And yeah, but they thought 2 years ago. And that's not just from data centers, it's also from bringing manufacturing back and electrification of other parts of the industry.
What do you consider a greater threat to our future national security, losing the AI arms race to China or climate change?
Well, I, as you probably know, I'm on the record of putting the economy and strategic concerns as number one, because not only from my perspective, but as we see from public opinion polls, that most people would put the economy and national security first.
If we lose the arms race in artificial intelligence, quantum computing to China, they will be the superpower, not a superpower. One of the things that I think we need to be taking a look at, in addition to the power generation, is our dependence on China for critical minerals and rare earth elements. I pointed out multiple times in these hearings that there's not a single major refinery for rare earth elements in the Western Hemisphere. There's only 9 in the world, 8 are in China, and the other one's in Malaysia. I think that's got to be a top priority. I mean, we're talking about AI here. We're not going to do anything in that specter if China cuts us off from rare earth elements and critical minerals. But we've also got to meet these demands for increased power. And one of the things that I suggested this morning in another meeting is there's over 100 coal-fired power plants and natural gas plants that have been shut in the United States. If we started today trying to build new power generation facilities, we don't have the manufacturing capacity to produce the turbines that we need to generate, to meet that new demand. But we've got existing turbines in many of these facilities and transmission lines already in place. So I'd like your thoughts on us utilizing small modular reactors at these facilities. They're not as site sensitive as other. For instance, you could get 600 megawatts from 2 small modular reactors at an existing facility where it would take 77,000 acres to get it from a turbine farm. And that turbine farm, basically, turbines would have to be replaced in 25 to 30 years. You'd get 40 to 60 years generation from an SMR. What do you think about that?
Well, Congressman, I'm delighted that the tech community in the United States and Congress are enthusiastic about nuclear power again. But the reality is that you can't buy a small modular reactor. They don't exist yet. We have to build them at scale, and that will take years. Similarly, it'll take
Actually, that GE Hitachi model, we think, can be built in 2 to 3 years.
Oh, look, you can construct that scale of reactor. This is the 300 megawatt class reactor. It's a little bit of a euphemism to think of 300 megawatts as, quote, small. These are very big power plants. We can certainly build them quickly. They are possible. The regulatory barriers here are still significant, but you're talking a decade before we have the infrastructure to build them. Similarly, we can build the infrastructure to make the critical minerals and rare earth mineral refineries here, but that will also take a decade. And meanwhile, as you know, 90% of the refined critical minerals to build windmills and solar panels are in China on coal-fired grids. So it's a problematic trade to buy technology made in China.
My point is that I think having worked for two international engineering companies and having a little bit of understanding about what it takes, and I've told people this, you can open a mine here, but it'll be 3 to 5 years before you start getting aggregate out. Take 3 years minimum to build a processor or refining facility, notwithstanding how long it takes to get the permitting. If you permitted it on day one, it'd still take that long.
Right.
But if we can build small modular reactors at scale, you're going to have some lower costs because you can basically build standardized designs. You can build advanced reactors that can use spent fuel. We could fuel a fleet of nuclear reactors for over 100 years. If you, though, use them at these shuttered hydrocarbon plants, natural gas and coal, wouldn't it be interesting that China's building coal-fired plants to power their AI expansion, that we could then use nuclear on shuttered hydrocarbon plants with no emissions to power ours? And I honestly believe that this is something that ought to be a top priority for this administration, a top priority for this Congress, to get these SMRs in place and get them in these places where we already have the turbines and already have the transmission lines.
Count my vote enthusiastically on that strategy, Congressman.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. I thank the chairman. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Any gentleman from Alabama is recognized for 3 minutes for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's interesting, the tactics that are being used here, but all of us have stated for the record that the people who are legally eligible for Medicaid are not going to lose their Medicaid. We've all got family members, friends, we've got people in our districts. We all know these stories, people that are depending on Medicaid, and you will not lose your Medicaid. Many of the people who've spoken out here and had to be removed, they're not going to lose their Medicaid. The interesting thing is, you will not. Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman will suspend. I want you to be heard, so let's wait to the. Gentleman is recognized.
It's unfortunate that people are so enraged by the misinformation that they've been given. It's a commentary on this this Congress and how we treat people. But one of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle pointed out that there was no waste or fraud. CMS reported that between 2015 and 2024, there was $543 billion in improper payments. I want the record to show that that's $543 billion that could have gone to people who need Medicaid coverage, Mr. Chairman, who need medicine, who need treatment. There's over 700,000 people in traditional Medicaid that are on waiting lists because, particularly in the expansion states, because they're being pushed aside because they don't get the high match that the able-bodied adults who choose not to work. And by the way, one of my colleagues said that only 8% of able-bodied adults are not working. Well, if 92% are working, what's your problem with work requirements? I mean, if they're already working, there's no problem there. And I didn't refer to anybody by name, so you don't get a chance to interrupt.
Okay.
I didn't refer to anybody. I didn't even refer to your state. So here's the issue. We're trying to save Medicaid. It's interesting, people are holding up signs, save our Medicaid. That's exactly what we're trying to do. I said that the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services reported this between 2015 and 2024, $543 billion in improper payments. That's waste and fraud. That's abuse of the people who need Medicaid. And there are other reports out there that indicate it may be over $1 trillion. So what we're trying to do is make Medicaid work for the people who are supposed to get it. That's it. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from Washington.
I really hope that the EPA will continue to partner with Congress so we can make sure that all of our communities have the healthy outcomes that they deserve. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I thank him for being efficient with his time. We're running out of it, and I now recognize the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Palmer, for 5 minutes. I will remind everybody that the witness has to leave at approximately 12:30, so we're trying to hurry through. Mr. Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Administrator Zeldin, for being here. I am, like some of my colleagues, concerned about some of the decisions that the EPA has made. But I'm looking at it from a little different perspective. For instance, there was a rule on lime dust emissions that was put forward by the EPA last summer, even though EPA's own scientific assessment said that emissions from lime manufacturing industry were already acceptable with an ample margin of safety. This rule would impose $2 billion on the industry, which gets passed on in multiple ways. Most people think of lime in the context of the manufacture of cement products, but it's also used to enhance soil quality. There are a number of other uses for it. Administrator Zeldin, is the EPA now taking a look at some of these rules that I think have gone outside of what's necessary and imposing an unnecessary cost on our economy and on people?
Yes, Congressman. Yeah, we've received various concerns regarding niche apps, including regulations not squarely grounded in the statutory authority, compliance costly to industry, deadlines for compliance with some requirements may be too short. Some of the rules may disproportionately impact small businesses. Questions exist regarding the science underlying certain standards. Test data used in calculating standards may not fully reflect variability and or real-world operations. Questions exist regarding the appropriateness of setting certain technology-based standards rather than health-based standards, and questions exist regarding the appropriateness of setting certain numeric emissions limits rather than work practice standards.
I'm glad you mentioned the technology-based standards because it's also involves the particulate matter standards. Some of the things that the EPA has imposed on people require what I jokingly refer to as black box technology. And people say, well, what's in the box? Nothing. That technology doesn't exist yet. And it poses enormous costs on the economy, but also on city governments that gets passed on to consumers. So I'm hoping that the EPA will take a more scientific approach to some of these rules, but also go back and look at the science behind some of the rules that have been imposed by the past administration and possibly consider repealing those. There's something else that I want to talk with you about that I think is really critical right now, and that is our ability to have access to rare earth elements. China controls 94% of the rare earth refining. They have the largest deposit of rare earth elements in the world. The United States, I think, is 7th on that list. And we're finding ourselves in a position where there's not a single major refinery for rare earth elements in the Western Hemisphere. There's only 9 in the world, 8 are in China, 1's in Malaysia. I think that we're at a point where we're going to have to look at permitting, look at the regulations in order for the United States to catch up, to secure the supply chain that we need. And there are multiple opportunities to do this. You can find rare earth elements in coal ash. You can find them in things like discarded hard drives. But we need to be able to mine, process, and refine our own rare earth element supply because it is not just important for our economy, it's important for our national security. I like your comments on that.
Congressman, this is one of the issues that are on the plate, the priority list for the National Energy Dominance Council. EPA has some equities. The Department of Interior has equities. The Department of Energy has equities. Department of Commerce. There is an opportunity here for us to be able to not just benefit economically, but I would also look at it as a matter of national security. For us not to have to rely on other nations at a moment where it would matter most in the future to make sure that we are prepared here domestically. So I think it is a very important priority for.
The gentleman yields. The chair now recognizes himself for 5 minutes for questions. Ms. Hunter, you said something at the very beginning that caught my attention about China's strategic leveraging and the bottleneck that's been created. We've got access to rare earth elements here in the United States and critical minerals. We have the seventh most, the most known reserves. So when you, it's not a matter of having them, it's what we're able to do with them once we get them. So would you like to comment on that?
We do have great progress, especially on the light rare earths domestically. That's something that's a bright spot. But until we can separate them, turn them into metal, things that are happening in the states that have been represented today, then ultimately we can't use them in the permanent magnets or robotics systems, defense applications, or energy solutions that we want to. So separation, metallization are key.
It's been mentioned that we could get rare earth elements from recycling products. I think we get about 18% of our antimony from recycled car batteries. We can recycle hard drives, computer equipment. There's waste that we can recycle. When I say that, we're talking about mine tailings and coal ash, things like that. Would that be sufficient to meet our needs, particularly in regard to our national security?
So defense demand for these materials is substantially smaller than commercial demand. So without having the numbers, and I can follow up with your staff to validate, we could make great progress using all forms of alternatives. Another way is to decrease demand for some commercial applications through, alternative abundant source non-rare earth magnets in certain applications, and definitely leveraging full value mining as much as
But that reduces the quality of the product.
But so use it in specific applications, so not for defense applications, so that we can then leverage the higher quality and qualified material for the defense applications in certain instances. So we have to yes and all of it.
If you look at it in the context of economic security runs parallel with national security, I don't think we can supply our needs just through recycling. But I do think recycling is a viable solution. Ms. Sweeney, when we talk about mining, right now 95% of the rare earth concentrates that we produce in the United States are being exported to China for processing. And one of the points that I've made to the Trump administration is that the day we permit the mine, we need to permit the processing and the smelting and the refining. So comment on the importance of a collaborative effort to get all this done almost simultaneously. And that doesn't mean if we start today, we'll have it tomorrow. I work for 2 international engineering companies, have a pretty good idea of how long it takes to build something.
It's really important to scale up the mining and the processing together. That has to be coordinated to really secure our supply chains. China has been able to do just that in their investments around the world and in their own country, and they get the value add of the processing, and that's something we're missing out. And we import $171 billion worth of werefined minerals last year alone.
Well, that's something Mr. Hergott mentioned in his written testimony, that we're stalling over $1 trillion in U.S. infrastructure investment. But and there's that the extension of what it does for the economy when you have this. And it's not just the mine or the processor or the smelter or the refiner. There are other industries that are involved in that. And it's not just federal permitting, Mr. Hergott. There are other state and local governments that are involved. Talk a little bit about how we need to address this, because I do think this is not only an economic security issue, it is a pressing national security issue. Microphone, please.
Where there is a federal interest, because it's entirely supported by the private sector, these backbone industries, the fact that the neodymium that is in your microphone, we give to China at $1, they sell it back to us at $500, and even as of this month, the architect of the Capitol is going to ask for a waiver to buy more from China for our own hearing room.
I just noticed I'm so short on time. I have another question I want to ask you specifically. You mentioned China's aging processing and refining capacity. I think that's an enormous opportunity for the United States if we will act build these capacities ourselves. Could you comment on that?
Yeah, very quickly. The Trump executive order is happening right at the same time that this window is opening up with China that will have a 10-to-1 impact on any money that was produced by the IRA, because that certainty is multiplied by the investment that is pouring into the United States that then has a multiplier effect of state and local income and the induced labor. So this is the window to do it. They are retooling and refabricating their processing, refinement, separating, and metallurgic processes that they built 20 years ago to beat us the first time. They can't reach the purity levels to meet the AI, the semiconductor, and as I mentioned before, it's going to take them 5-6 years to do that because they spent too much money developing dirty extraction processes in Mozambique and Indonesia and elsewhere. This is the window to do it.
Thank you, gentlemen. Just as a comment, I really do believe this is a bipartisan issue, and I think everybody on this subcommittee and the full committee takes this very seriously. So I look forward to working with my colleagues. Seeing there's no further members wishing to ask questions, I would like to thank our witnesses again for being here today. Ask unanimous consent to insert into the record the document included on the staff hearing documents list. Without objection, that will be the order. Pursuant to committee rules, I remind members that they have 10 business days to submit additional questions for the record and ask that the witness submit their response within 10 business days upon receipt of the questions. Without objection, the subcommittee is adjourned.
Now move to the distinguished gentleman, the young chairman from Alabama, Mr. Palmer. You're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to direct my questions a little bit differently, and I wanted to participate in this hearing because I've been looking at some of these issues for quite a while. And I realize this is focused predominantly on fraud, risk management. But one of the things that I think creates an opportunity for fraud and mismanagement is how we handle big projects at the Department of Defense, whether it's a construction project or a new weapon system. And I just want to ask each of you to comment on this if you think it's you're able to do that. I think a lot of times when Congress approves a major weapons system or a major construction project, and this is particularly problematic on construction projects overseas, there's a tendency on the part of Department of Defense to start those projects before the design is complete. And it results in a huge amount in change orders. I'm working on some ideas on how to mitigate that from the congressional side in terms of ensuring that the money will be there so that they don't feel the pressure to start these construction projects or other projects or weapon systems before the design is ready. But would you comment on how that, when your design is not complete, you're issuing lots of change orders, how that opens us up to mismanagement and potential fraud?
Me, sir? Yeah. I wouldn't be able to discuss that, but in a different sphere, I would submit that what you're talking about, large procurements of weapon systems, they are really hybrids for fraud because of the, like you said, the complex nature of and when they come online, and then the other parts come online. So we do have a lot of worry about large weapon systems, and we have a lot of fraud work in the past and now in those kinds of things when they're in that phase. So that's would be my feedback to you.
Mr. Bagdorian?
Yeah, I would fully agree with Mr. Mayo's comments. I mean, this is an element of hyper complexity. Basically, you have a big system. It has, the prime contractor, I assume, leading the effort, and then the whole army of subcontractors, which is a key element of risk here. I'm not a procurement expert by any means, but I do believe that that element of complexity, uncertainty, long lead times, all kinds of different things add to heightened risk, definitely.
And when you add to that just a myriad of change orders.
That's right.
Which I think is problematic. And then when you start talking about construction projects, and particularly in remote locations, I think it makes it very difficult for inventory management. And again, if the design is not complete and you're making all these changes, isn't that an area where we need to really bear down? And Mr. Chairman, I've been giving quite a bit of thought to this, and I've actually been thinking about this for 6 or 8 years about how we appropriate for major defense programs, and maybe thinking about saying that if a program design, if the project design or the weapon system design is not ready, that we carry the funding over into the next fiscal year, so that we give the Department of Defense time to get the design right. And I think that will reduce a lot of the fraud and mismanagement and save us a lot of money on that area, in those areas. And Mr. Mayo, Mr. Bogdoyan, you can comment on that. And you may have already commented sufficiently, but that's one of the areas where I really want to focus, Mr. Chairman, in terms of trying to reduce the amount of waste that we have in our defense procurement programs.
Yeah.
That I'll be happy to yield back.
Okay, if I may answer Mr. Palmer's question, Mr. Chairman, each element of complexity in a program, as I alluded to in my opening remarks, that's one of the key drivers of fraud risk in federal programs, is their complex configuration, what someone can do, can't do, and so on. So it's almost like risk is built in. And if you add multiple layers in a big, complex program of DoD, then that really exacerbates risk. So trying to control for that as part of the upfront due diligence, for example, would be an important step.
I thank the witnesses. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is Mr. Palmer from Alabama.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I want to point out that under Article 6 of the Constitution, the Supremacy Clause, that by declaring your states sanctuary states, you declared your intent to violate federal law. With that, are you aware that illegal aliens with known ties to terrorist organizations are now residing in the United States? That's a yes or no. Quickly, yes or no. Governor Walz.
I don't have firsthand knowledge, but I would assume
You should
yes.
have. Governor Pritzker.
I know that's been alleged. I don't have firsthand knowledge myself.
You should have. Governor Hochul.
My Joint Terrorism Task Force has surveillance.
Ma'am, that's a yes
We're
or
aware.
no. Either you know or you don't.
We are aware.
That's amazing, considering that the Customs Border Patrol reported just in fiscal year 23, 736 encounters with illegal aliens with ties to terrorist organizations. And there's it's 2.2 million estimated gotaways. We have no idea how many known terrorists are in our country. Do you support the arrest and deportation of illegal aliens with ties to terrorist organizations? So yes or no? Governor Walz.
If due process is given, certainly.
Governor Pritzker.
Exactly. We need
Governor
due
Hochul.
process before we
Hochul.
arrest people.
Yes or no?
Anyone involved in a crime, we
Ma'am,
cooperate.
yes or no?
We cooperate when any
Ma'am, yes
crimes
or
are-
no?
We cooperate
We
with any
cannot
crimes.
give a straight answer, and the answer is you're giving safe harbor to people with ties to terrorist organizations. Are you aware of that? Let me tell you. You're shielding members of known terrorist organizations such as MS-13, Tren de Aragua, Brown Pride Azteca, Barrios Azteca, Serenos, which is otherwise known as SIR 13, and the 18th Street Gang. Those are designated terrorist organizations. Many of these are the people responsible for bringing fentanyl in that's killed, along with other drugs, killed over 100,000 people per year. We're no longer in a war on drugs. We're involved in a war with drugs. These are casualties. Are you aware that the Department of Homeland Security identified over 400 illegal aliens who were smuggled into the United States with the help of an affiliate of ISIS? Are you aware of that, Governor Walz?
Congressman, I don't have direct knowledge of that.
Well, I'll help you. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter to the record article from NBC News. DHS identifies over 400 migrants brought in the United States by an IS-affiliated human smuggling network. Is that a problem?
Without objections ordered.
Does that raise any concern for you?
None of us want terrorists in this country.
Then why are you shielding people here from being picked up by our ICE agents, referring to this as a Gestapo organization? You know, I never want to get up on another morning like I did on September 11th, 2001. There are people in this country who are here with the full intent to do us harm. They came across our borders illegally. 358 of them crossed the northern border into New York. Not all of them into New York, but some of them came through New York. There's arms smuggling across the Canadian border into New York. And you're shielding these people. Are you aware that if just 0.5% of the estimated 15 million, 14.7 million to be exact, that came into our country illegally during the Biden administration, if just 0.5% are tied to criminal organizations or terrorist organizations, that constitutes more than the combined active duty forces of the Army and Marines? Does that not strike you as something that should be of great concern to us?
Since you raised New York, I'd like to answer.
Are you aware?
We cooperate fully with all investigations, particularly terrorists. I mean, you
Well, how do
cannot
you know
say
if they're
9/11 and not invoke
How do you
incredible
know,
emotion
Governor
from us.
Hochul, that they're terrorists if you don't allow people to be picked up who came here illegally to at least give an account for their presence?
We say
How
they
do you
should be vetted
know
at the
if they're
border.
not part of that 400 that we know came in through an ISIS-affiliated human smuggling operation? You don't know. You're not even looking into that.
You're pointing to an abject failure of the federal government to do its job to secure our
What I'm pointing out
borders.
here is that your sanctuary policies now constitute a threat to our national security.
We cooperate in all criminal investigations.
You are engaged
Always
in
have, always will.
operations against federal government attempts to enforce federal law that I think now constitutes a threat to our national security, and you're in violation of federal law.
That's 100% false.
And charges for obstruction should be brought against each one of you for doing this. I'll leave that up to the Department of Justice. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Chair now recognizes Ms. Crockett from Texas.
Mr. Chairman.
And Mr. Chair,
Point of order, point of order. That was intimidation of the witness.
Do you have a point of inquiry?
Yes, I have a point of inquiry.
State your point.
Raising the prospect of charges against witnesses is a form of intimidation, is it not? Thank you. Thank you, and I withdraw the question. I appreciate it.
Chair recognizes Ms. Crockett.
And as the former chairman, I want to congratulate you on chairing the committee, and I know it's going to function extremely well. Mr. Lynch, in your written testimony, I want to read something, and I quote, "As HRSA was directing the OPTN to conduct the review of KYDA practices, an industry trade group, the Association of Oregon Procurement Organizations, publicized an open letter characterizing the ongoing effort to improve patient safety through enhanced oversight as a misinformation conspiracy campaign and concluded it is time for it to stop." And it was signed by more than 20 of the UNO staff. Would that letter constitute an attempt to obstruct HRSA's investigation?
The legal definition of obstruct, I don't believe I would be the
I'm not talking about a legal definition.
It was concerning to HRSA that numerous high-ranking members of the contractor and members of the OPTN board did sign that. And in the review committee that we directed the OPTN to undertake, we asked that nobody who was a signer to that be a part.
But basically, they were saying there's nothing to be seen here.
That's correct.
Okay, but that's not the first time you've had issues. Your written testimony also notes that historically HRSA did not receive complete, consistent, and at times accurate information regarding patient safety and complaints and concerns raised by the OPTN members and other stakeholders. So if there's any consistency here, it's a consistency in trying to shield what they were actually doing.
So one of the problems with having a single contractor environment is that if it's responsible for devising the policies, anything that's happening that's out of compliance with the policies could be seen as a failure of that first process.
But what I'm not trying to necessarily throw people under the bus, because I'm an organ donor. It's on my driver's license, and I realize the consequence of this. We had a lot of discussions about this before we ever had the hearing, but at the same time, we've got a responsibility to make sure that people know that this process will be conducted humanely, that it will be conducted legally, and that the people who are doing it have at the very minimal the best interest of the individual donor and the families that are involved. And from your own written testimony and from the report from HRSA, I mean, there's multiple instances here where it appears that they were, I use the word obstruct, but clearly impeding an effort to expose some major problems, particularly in Kentucky.
We have a plan which is already in place to prevent that in the future, which includes making sure that.
I understand, but what I'm trying to say is that we're trying to conduct an oversight hearing to come up with some solutions, which I think your efforts are excellent from what I've read, and that's exactly what you're trying to do. But I think there's got to be some accountability. There were clearly some things that happened that I think could constitute euthanasia. I mean, if the patient's dying, but they take the patient's organs before they die, that's euthanasia.
When we identify conduct that we find is at odds with the OPTN contractor's duty, we have notified them of the expectation to perform better.
Well, again, we had this discussion before we had this hearing, we want to make sure that the American public knows that if they are willing to become an organ donor, they're going to be treated humanely and legally, and that the family's wishes will be respected, and that you're not going to have these horrible situations like we've seen here in Kentucky and some other places, frankly. And my main concern is that you're able to do your oversight function without interference from anyone. I really am disappointed that 20 people signed this letter, which to me constitutes obstruction of a legitimate investigation, which the investigation uncovered some serious problems. And I just want to know if there's any consequences that anyone will be held responsible for how they conducted this. And going on reading through your testimony, there are other examples where you weren't given accurate information. I won't say that it was fraudulent, but it was clearly intended to not reach the conclusion that you needed to reach.
So when we identify a deficiency, we do communicate that in the contracting manner.
But what are the consequences?
As a non-contracting expert, there is a stepwise progression in noting a government contractor's ability to perform its functions effectively. The consequence that is within my direct scope is that we do not take these things on faith. We are trying to make sure that this is something that the government has the accountability. We have now the resources to get this done, so we double check the work.
My time has expired, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
And the chair now recognizes the gentleman from Alabama's 6th District for 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll allow you to answer that question from Ms. McClellan. That's in line with some of my questions.
Well, I will say that cybersecurity is not really in the wheelhouse of pipeline safety for our organization. It's more of a reliability issue, so we don't really dig into the weeds on it. The way we've approached it is the integrity management program for high consequence areas requires an operator to identify all potential threats against the pipeline, create a plan to mitigate against those threats, and implement that plan. And cybersecurity threats should be considered one of those threats, and PHMSA could adopt some specific standards within integrity management. To the rest of your question, as far as agency coordination is beyond my expertise.
Mr. Black, I'd like for you to take a shot at that question as well, but back in 2021, we had a ransomware attack on the Colonial Pipeline, which was in my district, and there have been multiple attacks at various healthcare facilities around the country, and as more pipeline networks become part of that equation, the threat of another attack is very much a real possibility, whether it's fuel line like the Colonial Pipeline or other pipelines. can you address where you think we are in terms of protecting our pipelines from cyber attacks and what we need to do to protect them?
Glad to address both of you. Cybersecurity is very important to pipelines. Like any Fortune 500 company, pipeline operators need to maintain safeguards to protect their commercial systems and their operational systems. We'll do that in concert with the Transportation Security Administration, working with them on cyber directives. I believe you asked about CISA reauthorization. LEPA supports reauthorization of CISA. That will give pipeline operators the opportunity, a safe place to work with government to talk about threats. It's quite important that PHMSA coordinate with those with cybersecurity expertise to make sure that anything that PHMSA does is in concert with what they know about how to do cybersecurity for pipelines, which quickly evolving technologies and threats. Very important.
So are you hearing much on that from industry?
Every day, we know there are attempts to breaches. I participate in classified briefings from government. We must always have our guard on pipeline safety. Thankfully, there are recommended practices. There are interactions with government and experts to try and improve that. We can never stop our vigilance.
Do you feel like PHMSA is weighing in on this properly? They're doing their part? Or do we need to be doing more?
PHMSA is not key on cybersecurity, and I think that's okay. We'll work with CISA and with TSA. We need PHMSA to make sure they're talking with them. Many of these briefings, PHMSA is a part of those. That coordination should be done right to make sure there's not conflicts and overlapping and pipeline operators being told to do two different things. We need to make sure we're doing that right.
Do we know if these are just in the ransomware attack situation with Colonial Pipeline? That was just people trying to extort money. But do we have nation state involved in this, or people who are being given safe harbors? We know they are, in China and Russia and other places to launch these attacks. Is there any
public
effort?
setting, generally, yes. And I know there's people I can encourage you to talk to in government that can help take you more. But we must be vigilant and must be working on this well every day.
My concern about this transcends the pipelines. I mean, it's the critical infrastructure across the country that could be subject to a cyber attack, whether it's a ransomware attack or from a state-sponsored terrorist group. I mean, it could be anything. And I think that our grid, in its totality, not just the power grid, but the entire totality of the grid, whether it's pipelines or power, we've got to make this a very serious issue, a top priority.
We Americans use all these forms of energy every day, and we can't afford to have something down from a cyber incident. You're absolutely right. Thank you for paying attention to that.
Well, I appreciate your response. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. Distinguished gentleman, the young chairman, Mr. Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've seen a spike in mail theft and postal-related crime. Is there a particular reason why we're seeing that? Mr. Donahue?
I believe so. There are a number of reasons. First, as I referred to in my oral testimony and then also in my written testimony, we have seen a shift from criminal activity, from what would be considered high-risk, high-reward crimes, such as drug trafficking, to those organizations engaging in low-risk, high-reward financial crimes. And that is really what motivates individuals to commit mail theft. They are seeking to steal the mail, to perpetrate financial crimes, and that has driven activity. Also, online forums and marketplaces where whether it's stolen checks, postal keys can be easily sold, and also the use of encrypted messaging that makes it more difficult for law enforcement to be able to intercept those communications and to be able to conduct its investigations. All of those things, I believe, have helped to add to this atmosphere where criminals believe it's permissive to commit these crimes. And I think also there's a significant issue when it comes to deterrence and being able to deter these. Again, in my oral written testimony, I spoke to some of the prosecutorial challenges we have, but then also some of the challenges that we have with sentencing.
Well, let me ask you.
Yes, sir.
I want to go a little bit deeper into this, a little different direction. So based on your answer there, are they seeking to get personal identification information from the mail? And if they're doing that, are they transferring that, selling that information to international organizations? I mean, is that where we're seeing the uptick?
So I believe the uptick is what I mentioned before, specific to the theft of financial instruments. But certainly we see the theft of mail to perpetrate identity theft, the theft of personal identifying information.
Do you see international groups involved in that?
We certainly do see international groups in a lot of investigations that we conduct, both involving mail theft, financial crimes, and others.
We saw during the COVID pandemic an enormous amount of theft in regard to unemployment, bonus compensation, and other compensation. And a lot of that was perpetrated by international groups. Some of it was perpetrated within the United States by different groups, and they were using the mail. For instance, where states sent out debit cards. Is that part of, have we seen, has that continued going forward, that type of criminal activity?
So we certainly...
You can answer.
Yeah. So we certainly have seen, as you noted, during the pandemic, where criminal organizations, both domestically and overseas, perpetrated mass pandemic fraud, taking advantage of the large amount of money that was made available, and also some of the looser restrictions on obtaining those funds. And then, in some cases, stealing checks or prepaid debit cards or other payment mechanisms that were in the mail to perpetrate these crimes.
Where do most of these crimes occur? Do they occur at the individual's post office box at the street, or I think theft at collection boxes has gone down quite a bit. Are they interdicting the postal delivery officer en route?
So,
where do most of the thefts occur?
So if it involves the Postal Service in terms of that financial crime, the theft of PII, personal identifying information, or financial instrument, that can occur anywhere along the process in which mail is being sent or received. And so in some cases, that is at the street level, and when it's at the collection box. In some cases, it's when it's at a person's mailbox at their house that's unsecured. In other cases, unfortunately, there are a very small number of individuals that work for the Postal Service who commit crime and take advantage of their position and steal mail from there, which Mr. Rothstein spoke to earlier. So we see it all along the process where there is potential for theft.
What should people be doing to secure their personal identification information against mail theft?
So there are a number of things that individuals can do to secure their personal identifying information against mail theft. First, suggest that individuals, when they receive their mail, that they pick it up as soon as possible when it's delivered to their mailbox. We encourage customers to sign up for informed delivery that gives them a preview of mail that's coming to their house so they can identify what mail is going to come to their house, and they can be on the lookout for it and get it. We also encourage individuals, if they're going to send mail, to mail in the most secure way possible. They can bring it into the post office. They can hand it to their letter carrier, who will take it from them, or if they work at a place of business, they can have it picked up there. Those are just some of the tips that we provide to the public on how to safely and securely send their mail.
With your permission, Mr. Chairman, one last question. Do you provide that information online, or how would you get that information to the customers of the U.S. Postal Office?
Thank you. So we do provide it in a number of ways. In some cases online, in some cases the prevention material that I showed before that we worked on with the American Bankers Association, which is made available through them and all the other financial institutions. In some cases, we share it with the public through community forums, through presentations. In some cases, coming on to members of the House and their town halls that they have with their constituents, where we're more than happy to participate and share that information. Social media, again, there are a number of ways that we share that information.
Thank you. I thank the witnesses. Thank the chairman for his indulgence, and I yield back.
Chair recognizes Mr. Palmer from Alabama. Microphone.
Attorney General Schwab, are you aware that the FBI requires that all states and local governments, police departments report crime to the National Incident-Based Reporting System?
I think that is correct, sir.
Okay. Washington, D.C. has not done a good job at that. As a matter of fact, you've been accused of cooking the books, and it's not just a problem in Washington. Mr. Chairman, when this went into effect, Illinois only reported 30.6% of their police departments reported. New Jersey only 28.7%, New York 13.8%, Maryland 9.5%, California 1.9%. I would argue that when you're presenting crime statistics, that these are highly suspect because state and local police departments are not reporting the data. We've known this for a long time, that the homicide rates are underreported. The FBI has made that clear. I want to move to something else. We do have a crime surge. Violent crime, property crime, particularly vehicle theft. Washington, D.C. has a truancy problem. Almost 33% of the students are chronically truant, second only to Baltimore. What are you doing to resolve that, Mayor Bowser? And I want to add that 18,000 truancy cases went uninvestigated over the last 3 full school years.
Well, first and foremost,
I'm just asking, are you doing anything?
Yes.
What?
We have in place a regime where schools report, and we've most recently updated it to focus more on our human services department, a department.
Ma'am?
Yes.
When I'm asking you about investigating truancy cases, that means going out and finding the kid and getting them back in the classroom.
Oh, we do that. The police do that every day.
18,000 went uninvestigated.
No,
half of your carjackings are by juveniles.
So
you've got 5 times more middle school students truant than you did a decade ago. That's a crisis. Do you believe that kids that are chronically truant are going to wind up becoming dropouts or undereducated, that it might lead to an increase in crime in that population?
We think the best place for kids is in school.
No. How does it impact their life going forward? Because I'm a big believer in getting kids out of failing schools. My wife and I support 2 private schools that are targeting inner city kids. These kids don't show up truant. They come to class, they graduate, they get jobs, they go to college. What are you doing to find these kids? And I'm not talking about giving them a free lunch. I'm talking about getting them back in the classroom. I mean, you said something about the National Guard mowing lawn. Maybe the National Guard ought to be helping you find these kids and get them in the school.
Congressman, if I may, the council has had hearings at least once a year. We have a hearing scheduled
Well, it's not doing
next
any
month
good.
with regard to attendance and what we're doing to reduce truancy.
Yeah.
I agree with
What
you.
about all
that
these kids that you've already lost because you sat on your butt and didn't do anything about it?
Well,
18,000 went uninvestigated.
I agree with you that attendance is important and truancy is a problem. Truancy is actually down. It's down 22% since school year 21-22. And serious
still
absenteeism,
almost
which is 30% of
33%.
days, is down 43% since
It's
school
down
year
5% in
21-22.
Baltimore from 54% to 49%. That's half your kids.
So it's down below that at this point. We get a report every fall. I don't know if you've seen the reports from the Attorney General, from Child and Family.
Let me ask the mayor this. Do you plan to take full advantage of the $1,700 tax credit scholarship program that can go to scholarship granting organizations to help kids get into schools where they're safe and where they can learn?
We do take advantage of the Opportunity Scholarship Program.
That was in the One Big Beautiful Bill, by the way. We are committed to trying to help kids get a good education.
So are we.
Well, I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back.
Time has expired and yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Alabama's 6th District for 5 minutes for questions.
Mr. Novak, are you aware that we're in an arms race for artificial intelligence and quantum computing with China?
I am, sir.
Are you aware that we're going to have to double our baseload capacity in order to power the data centers that we'll need to win that arms race?
I am, sir.
Do you believe, based on your knowledge of what the Department of Energy is doing, that we can do that with renewables?
No, no, sir.
The physics don't work, do they?
They don't.
I keep hearing my colleagues talk about what China's doing. I know they're big fans of China, but I think we're in a existential competition with China. It's going to determine who's the dominant power in the world. Whoever masters AI and quantum computing, they will not be a superpower. They will be the superpower. And we need to do what it takes to be able to meet that challenge and win that arms race, as I said. I know China's built a lot of renewables, but they're basically forcing renewable power generation on the general population in order to preserve their fossil fuel assets. Would you agree with that?
I'm not familiar, sir, with the policy choices that are being made by the PRC. It's a different economic system. The concept
It's also more part of their national strategy because they're putting more and more into their military. They realize that they have limited resources. They have huge amounts of coal, limited access to natural gas. They're also, they're ahead of us in small modular reactors. They've got one online already. They've got 4 in the queue. One of the things that I think that everybody on this committee ought to be focused on is small modular nuclear reactors because it addresses the whole issue of emissions, but it also will help us meet that increased baseload demand. Have you been informed on that effort?
I have. I've had several conversations with Ted Garish, who's our nominee for the Assistant Secretary for Nuclear Energy, about the objectives in regard to small modular reactors and microreactors. A very promising solution, something we're committed to.
Well, there's one of the things that I think we can do, and over the last several years, we've closed about 300 hydrocarbon power generation facilities. Most of them are coal. I know there's some concerns that the administration may be open to reopening some of those using coal, but I've been really pushing putting small modular reactors on those sites. That helps deal with the not in my backyard issue, but also the transmission lines are still there. We could place small modular reactors based on the design capacity of the transmission lines, which would, I think, help increase the base load available to make sure that the power utility rates didn't go up for households and for businesses, but also help us meet the increased demand that we're going to have. The other thing, are you aware of how dependent we are on China for refined critical minerals and rare earth elements?
I am.
Are you aware that there's not a single major refinery for rare earth elements in the entire Western Hemisphere?
I am.
Are you aware that it's going to be a tremendous additional demand for power to build processing and refining capabilities and capacity here in the United States?
I am.
Can we do that with renewables?
Yes.
Do you think we can meet that power demand with renewables?
No, sir. No, sir.
You cannot have a power source that does not give you a consistent base load.
Correct.
Thank you. I just think that we're in a situation right now that we're no longer talking about economics. We shouldn't even be talking about politics. We ought to be talking about national security. We have a window that's going to close. If we don't meet this challenge, we're going to find ourselves in a really bad place, and the future of the country will be in the balance. That's my opinion. It's not just my opinion, it's the opinion of many, many others. So that's one of the reasons why this committee, under the leadership of Chairman Guthrie and Latta and some of the others, have made it a top priority to meet that demand, to win that competition. So I just want to make this statement for the record. We cannot do it with renewables. We're going to have to do it with the resources that I think that we can lead the world in, and that's small modular reactors, to meet that power demand, to be able to refine the rare earth elements that we need to build the microchips and semiconductors in order to win that arms race for artificial intelligence and quantum computing. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you.